And I'm Research Director and Adjunct Associate Professor at Indian School of Business, Hyderabad. I welcome all of you to this Heartfulness Wellness Series, seminar series. As you see that the different topics have been covered in this interesting webinar series. Today, I'll be covering the topic of climate change. And we are actually staying in a very difficult and different time, which is rapidly changing. So I'll take you through the process of how climate change is impacting our lives and what can we do about this. I'm going to be talking this through the report that I have been involved in. I'm an IPCC author, and I was the coordinating lead author for a special report that focused on two interconnected systems, the oceans and the cryosphere in the world. And this is a report which was published by IPCC in 2018. It was about 104 authors were part of this report, and 31% of these authors were women. They were all representing from 36 countries. And we looked at about 7,000 odd papers. These papers are all published papers and evidence to see what is the change process is happening in the climate scenario. The IPCC report process are very extensive. It spans for 3 to 4 years. Some special report also has 3 years span time, in which we had gone back to the community every time we written the draft. So about 1,000 comments had come from different community groups and academicians, activists, and people who are concerned about the climate change process. Those comments were incorporated in the whole process. It's a robust system through which these reports have been produced. I'll take you through this, what is the implications, how is the climate changing in, say, high mountain areas. High mountain areas, as you know, are areas which actually holds a lot of water, and some of these areas are glaciated. What we found is that there has been a frequent changes in the mountain cryosphere. We found that smaller glaciers has been losing its mass balance. That means glaciers are declining. There's a glacier melt, and this is happening because of the global warming. The Earth has warmed up to about 1 degree centigrade from the pre-industrial age, and this warming has impacted on the glaciers, because the glaciers are found to be declining in most of the regions. This retreat of glaciers will also continue to adversely affect the recreational activity, the tourism. This also, largest reserve of fresh waters in the form of ice. If they start melting, that we'll have problems in the survival of the humanity. So this is what we found, that about more than 80% of this glacier will retreat. If the climate change is going to continue in the same way as it is now, we are going to have a huge loss by 21, the end of century scenario. We found also that the changes in the mountain cryosphere, that is, the cryosphere is the frozen part of the world. So in the high mountain area, which are the snow-clad mountains, and if those changes are happening as it is happening at this moment, that will lead to landslides. It will also lead to avalanche, floods, and change the water availabilities. And this will be both quality as well as quantity. And this will have an impact on the communities who are living directly from these water resources. There are many millions of people who thrive on the water which flows in the rivers. And most of the rivers, in, say, for example, South Asia, are glaciated rivers. I will tell you slightly as we go along in terms of the implications for South Asia. And we need to also limit the risk for mountain hazard, because the global warming is going to impact on the mountain environment, and this has to be limited. So we have to act now. There's no other go. This is evidence which is scientifically proven, and this is coming from the assessments of IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Now let's go to the polar regions. Now, if you see the polar regions, the North Pole and the South Pole, what we found is that the Arctic Sea ice is declining every month of the year, and because of the global warming, the Arctic Ocean will rarely be free of sea ice. in September. This is the major thing. So if we warm as we are doing now at 2 degrees centigrade by end of the century, we will this Arctic Sea, sea ice which is there, which will occur once up to 1 year in the three. So that's the way it has been going to be impacted, and this impact is in terms of the declining and the melting of the polar regions, and that's alarming because these are the regions which has a lot to contribute to regulate the world's environment. As we are warming up, we are melting those glaciers. There's another example is that when the water these glaciers melt, it contributes to increase water availability in the rivers, and then because the water goes down and meets the sea level starts rising. So we see the coastal extremes and the sea level which will rise. What we have actually found that during the 20th century, the global mean sea level that has rose by only 15 centimeter, but this is now currently rising more than twice as fast, and that is an impact of climate change. This will further accelerate up to about 1.10 millimeters in 2100 by end of the century scenario, if the emissions will not be curtailed. This is leading to many areas like the low-lying coastal cities, small islands, that will be exposed to risk of flooding. And you see some of the islands like we also found that some of these areas such as Maldives and small islands nations will have a huge problem in terms of changing environment that is impacting their lives and livelihood. There's another part which of this meeting is also looking at the ocean and the marine life. We have found that the ocean is much more warmer. We have warmed up in 2018, it's warmed to about 0.8 to what we call the monsoons. What we call is the cyclones. You may have heard these two deadly cyclones, super cyclones have come, one in Bay of Bengal, and the second one is called Cyclone Nisarga, which is just had come in the Arabian Sea. These are very unprecedented because the super cyclones have not been there in the past. Severity as well as the frequency of these cyclones will be much more in the future. So this is a very uncertain future, and this is part of what we call the new normal. That means we have to be very, very prepared of how these cyclones are going to be impacting life. It has impact on the fish production. The ocean is more acidic, so it is actually the production has been going down. This is in the recorded production history of our in the world is showing that there's a huge decline in the production process. It is also going to be because a lot of people are dependent on the ocean products, especially the fishes, for their nutritional and health supplements. And second part is also about the pollution of the sea. And this is also not helping the marine life. And then pollution, as you may have seen some pictures which has been there where plastics are all accumulated by the sea, and that is degrading the fish, the life in the ocean especially. So we need to have new management of fishery systems. We have to have some protected areas in marine areas which needs to be taken up. So the major issue that we are trying to focus here is that how are these changes impacting the lives and livelihood of people, and what can be done. So the time for acting now is there. So we need to really act, and this act has to happen by either government or individuals or communities and all together. So there are different areas which the government has to act. There are different areas where community can come together, and definitely individual actions are required. Now, I'm going to take you through what is the implication of this report. These findings of IPCC report is on the Indian subcontinent. So, what is the impact is going to have in Indian subcontinent? You know that one of the Hindu Kush Himalayan region, which we are part of, and this region is called the third pole because the largest concentration of ice apart from the two poles, the North Pole and South Pole. So this is called the third pole, and which is situated in South Asia. And about 8 countries, starting from Afghanistan, Pakistan till Myanmar, are part of what we call the Hindu Kush Himalayan regions. These regions are water tower. As you see in this picture, there's a snow-clad mountain. These are all mighty Himalayas, and these are the water towers that has frozen water, which is fresh water, and then it releases during the summers. But when global warming happens, the water level increases and the decline happens much faster, and it's not regulated. But this is also a region, as you can see from this picture, is also a region which has which originates and sustain about 10 major river basins in the entire regions. And this is if you look at it from from the map, as far as China plus the entire South Asia, there are about 10 river basins which are fed by the Himalayan systems. About 210 million people live across the Himalayas, and if you count the people who are benefited by the water and major river basins, the rivers like Indus, Ganga, Brahmaputra, all these rivers are originated in the Himalayan regions, and about 1.3 billion people downstreams are benefited. And if you see the entire food production chain, which is sustained from this river systems, is about 3 billion people. So you can imagine the concentration of population is so high in this region, plus the benefits that people get from the Himalayan systems. So if these Himalayan systems are at risk, we'll have a huge problem in the future. What are the key implications for Himalayas if the decline is happening at the global warming and the change in environment is happening at the rate? One is that then for the Indian subcontinent, Indian state, there we have about 10 Himalayan states and 2 Himalayan territories, and this is going to be impacting about 86 million people in India, and this is about by 2030, which is only 10 years down the line, the population is going to be increased by 110 million. So about 110 million people will be directly impacted from the glacier's decline, because their lives and livelihood are very closely linked with the Himalayan system. There's another report called 1.5 degree global warming report, which is also by IPCC, and this report has said that the projected the areas are projected to warm up by about more than 2 degrees centigrade. So because the elevation dependent warming, if the normal warming is about 1.5 degree, it actually elevates in the Himalayan regions, and then the warming impact is much more in the Himalayan regions. There's another study which shows that about if the level of warming is going to be like that, about 64% of glaciers will be lost by end of the century. So we almost more than half of the glaciers will be losing by end of the century if the similar level of emission are going to be there. So this is a very, very dark future we are going to live in. This is also because these systems are economic engines of the regions. The entire about 8 to 10 countries are part of this whole region, and one of the highest concentration of population is in this South Asia region. So it is contributing to freshwater reserves, biodiversity, natural resources. All these are going to be impacted. So what happens actually to Himalayan glaciers directly going to impact about 2 billion people who are living in Asian subcontinent. What is going to happen in the coastal regions, right? The coastal, as I said earlier, also the coastal region, we have about 20. The global warming was about 15 centimeters during the 20th century. It is rising twice as fast. and in the region it is expected about it's about 3.6 millimeter per year is the rate of sea level rise, and it is accelerating. As we're talking, it is accelerating. And as I explained earlier also, this, because of the sea level rise, this is impacting on the oceans. Some areas are getting impacted, especially the coastal areas. The water level is going to be saline, especially the groundwater, because the seawater intrudes into the freshwater bodies. And India is pretty vulnerable because we have one of the largest coastline in Asia, which have over 7,500 kilometers long. It's a huge coastal region, 9 coastal states and 2 union territories, and covers about 560 million population, which is directly along the coastline, living along the coastline. And altogether, so the district where people are living about 255 and 60 million, and about 200 million who are directly going to be affected, and most of these are poorest in the fisher folk, because they are dependent on the on the sea for their livelihoods, and they're directly dependent. Some of the major country cities which are in the Indian system is Mumbai, Kolkata, Chennai, Goa, Vizag. All these cities are going to be at risk because what is expected is more and more frequent cyclones, and each time cyclones comes, it wipes out the the economy to an extent. It's very difficult to go back. So it's very difficult scenario we are living in, and the cities are also going to be at risk. You may have seen some picture of the recent cyclones in West Bengal, where people living in some of the high rises have faced huge problems. So it is not only that the poorest was going to be affected, which as usual, but it's also middle class and the upper middle class. So all the people are going to be affected. This is not going to be spared by anybody. Below, now I'm trying to outline 5 major challenges of sustainability. So what are the major challenges that we have? First is definitely changing climate. I've already been discussing this. Second is water shortage. We have this water which is scarce, and as we warm up the earth much more, water levels evaporates, and then there's less water available. I'll explain this to you as we go along. Third is definitely rising temperatures. So you have the earth temperature is warmed up. Our summers are going to be much more severe, and more we'll have to see much more rise in the average temperature in the summer month, and this is also worrisome. We also have increased urbanization. So when the unplanned urbanization happens, the risk and the hazards are increasing. Some of these hazards are also because it's a location-based hazard. So that means if you're staying close to the sea, or if you're staying in Himalayan towns, your risk exposure is much higher. At the same time, if you're living in areas like in Rajasthan, where the temperature touches, say, 50 degrees centigrade, your risk of exposure is very high. So one is the location-based risk. The second is also because of the consequence that you have on the different systems which you're dependent on. So economy that you're dependent on. So if any economy disruption happens, you're directly impacted by those things. So urbanization is another challenge. Industrial pollution, the effluents and the air pollution that we have due to rising economy, and also because of the lack of regulations or enforcement of regulations. These will also be impacting our lives and livelihood. I'm sure Delhi, you all know that Delhi is a classic case where, these issues have been discussed, especially the air pollution in the winters. It's been smog all over, and that's because of the surrounding areas in which industrial pollution have been contributing to Delhi's case. And key sectors, I will be quickly telling you what are the key sectors that will be affected by climate change. Definitely health, because there is expected to be rise in the vector-borne disease, and the severe weather events. Say for example, flood or drought will have an impact on our own health. So the health sector is something that is going to be impacted. Economic growth, definitely, because any extreme event that happens, economic growth is hampered. Either it is for example, slow down economy, or the supply chain gets disrupted, market gets disrupted. So that fuels to lack of economic growth. The agriculture and food security is also another area which is impacting, because about 60% of our people are directly dependent on agriculture. So any uncertainty in the climate, because our agriculture is directly dependent on the climate systems, especially monsoon systems and otherwise. So those systems are, because it is interlinked, and crop failure, for example, has been very phenomenal for many farmers. And then you hear about farmer suicide because they've invested quite a lot in agriculture, and suddenly one cyclone comes and wipes out, one drought comes, it just wipes out. So these are the issues that are there. And water, I've already discussed how this is going to be reducing the access to water because of the warming of the world, and also the change in the water regimes. Yeah, either you have too much water or you have too little water, and that's something that we have to really manage. So water management is another area which we have to really work upon. So the global warming threats, as I said earlier, this is there are about three major ones that I will like to put together here. One is definitely average temperature in India has been on a rise. So and second is because we are one of the most populated countries, we'll also lose out most from the heat stress. And third is definitely our Indian cities are getting much more hotter. So as we are warming the world, we are directly impacted by those warming. This is the next slide, which shows how from starting in the century till today, how much the average temperature has gone. It's almost reaching about 26 degrees. This is an average things which is already warmed up. So it shows that in last 8 years, the hottest year was about 2016, when the average temperature across India was 46.2 degrees. So that's another thing. So the global temperature is warming up. It's impacting India, and in a huge way. And also, as we discussed earlier, this is also leading to what we call the water stress. There's another study which was done by World Resources Institute, shows that about 54% of India is facing high and extremely high levels of water. In this picture, if you see the dark color, the darker areas are actually going to be much more, which are areas which has been mapped as the more water stressed areas. So very few areas, if you see only in the northeast, is something which is low. Otherwise, water scarcity and water stress is going to be being the order of the day, and that's what is worrisome for a lot of people like us. So now I'm trying to see what can we do, about this whole thing. What is the solution? Because we've only diagnosed the problem. Let's focus on the solution. And solution can be in three spaces. One is definitely the government has to act. So the lot government has to be accountable for, and it is in terms of policies, in terms of changing their own ways in which we have been doing and managing work. So that rests on the government. The second, as community, what can we do? And I know the Heartfulness community is pretty strong. So as community, what can we do? And that is another areas. And the third is what we call as individual. Because of the interest of time, what I will focus now is what an individual like you and I can do to contribute to to a better environment for ourselves. And I would focus here on three major things. One is definitely is to, wherever you're staying, try to make that area green in whatever way possible. Either you can have a small garden, you can plant trees, you can do anything. For example, if you have a birthday at home, someone of your near and dear ones, please plant tree and protect those trees. So that's another ways in which as many trees as you plant, it sinks in the carbon and reduces the impact of climate change. And you would think that what will happen if I plant only one tree? But imagine, if a large number of people are listening to this and they're planting more and more trees, we'll have much more greener environment, and that is where it's going to be helpful. We also, this one very simple way in which, and I have done it myself, is to segregate waste at your home. You can segregate the organic and the inorganic waste with a very simple technique, which is all available online. You can check it out. You can actually convert your organic waste into manure, which is in not, it's something which is in, which can be done in a month's time. So there are ways in which you can make the compost and use that for your garden, use that for any of the manure system. So you don't have to send this waste, because the more waste we generate and the more waste we send it for processing, it actually goes into landfilling areas, and it impacts the lives of the people there. So I will say that minimize your waste as much as possible, and also use less of the products that comes with the packaging. So use local, use things which is grown close by, and just very simple thing that when you're going for shopping, do not use plastics. Just say no to plastic. Carry your own bags. Nowadays, even a lot of people are making jute bags. So very nice, fancy jute bags also are coming up. I have a bag which has about 10 pockets inside, which I bought from Amazon for as less as about 500 rupees. And when I go to buy my shops, vegetable market, I refuse to take any plastics, and I get everything in those pockets, which is very easy to segregate. Or one can also take 3 or 4 different types of bags, and then just go to the market to buy it. Just a small little planning at your end will help a lot to not polluting the environment as it is. Second part which is there is eat climate friendly food. We need to switch to a food system which is climate friendly. Our ancient system was all based on these principles. We used to eat local. We used to eat more vegetables than meat. We used to, I mean, earlier the system was farming was organic. Now, from last 50, 60 years or 100 years, we have changed that. But many areas are still very, very organic in nature. So that's another one. Please do not waste food. Take as much as you want. And then to go for second serving, but do not waste a single grain of food. Each time you waste food, it actually doesn't help in the environment, because to grow food, you have to invest a lot. It is also about human effort that goes into making food, but it is also the natural resources that is used for growing food. So please do not waste food. Take as much as you eat, and do not and cook also, which is sufficient for your family. Do not make many items which you cannot use it, and then sometime you throw it out because it gets spoiled. Also, if possible, wherever possible, you can grow your own food, and it can be done with as small as 50 square meters of area. You can have garden, and there are many tutorials available online which you can focus and grow your own food. I started growing some part of my own food, and which is very natural. So you can also save money out of this whole process, because one is the joy of eating fresh. Second is also the money part of it. So you can, it's a win-win on all front. Third, which I would actually urge, and this is all at individual level, you can do it from today. You can do it from now. Use less energy. Use the energy very wisely. So switch off the lights and fans wherever it is not in use. Minimize uses of air conditions, or use them wisely. What I do is that, if it is very hot, we have insulated windows, which is very not very difficult to install. And if you run AC for 1 hour, 2 hours, every 3 to 4 hours, the room is cold enough. So if people who are living in extremely hot areas, if they have to use AC, please use it wisely, and please use it so that you minimize your AC usage, because it takes a lot of energy. And most of it, even now in India, 80% of our energy is contributed from the coal, and the coal is not called it's a black energy, so it's not a green energy. Still, we have a long way to go. Wherever possible, in the upper middle class or middle class region, you can install solar solar energy systems, which is another area which you can explore. Also use energy efficient light bulbs. Nowadays everybody is using it, but if you have light bulbs which is taking more energy, please change them. And it's so inexpensive nowadays to buy LED lamps and LED bulbs. So please go ahead and to use them wisely. This is how I end my presentation, and I look forward to your comments. My details are in this slide, where you can find my email ID and my phone number. I'll prefer you sending an email to me, and if you have any questions and if you want to take this forward or ask anything in particular from me, I'll be very happy to get back to you. Thank you so much for listening to me, and namaskar, and stay well, stay safe. Thank you. Bye-bye. So I'm done.